All
I had
right,
to find my volume.
so I'd like to call this meeting to order. And I'm going to turn it over to Brian. This is a board workshop.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for being here. Somebody just told me we had over 72 people watching and counting. So we are truly one of the key shows. I'm not sure it's for the capital improvement. Sorry, guys. But I think it might be for our reopening framework presentation that's part of the So if somebody's giving me a lot of feedback, just so if you can't hear me, let me know. I'm kind of moving back here a little bit. But so at our last meeting, we talked a bit about our capital improvement project, the bid options, things like that. We have King and King as well as LaChase here this evening. Thank you I see Carrie, Mike, Bob, and I'm not sure if anybody else is there, at least on the pictures. Oh, up in the corner, a couple more up in the corner there. So anyway, I really wanted to, Ryan's up there. And so I wanted to really come back around. Do you have any questions? And just to remind you kind of where we were at the last meeting, we had talked about a number of different options, and option 3 was one of the options that we were looking at. And in that included Lanigan site work for 2020, interior Lanigan and Volney and junior high school in the spring, summer, fall of 2021, and junior high school in Volney site work in 2021. That left us with a project overage at $1.5 million, 1.529 in that option number 3. And that was taking a few other of the smaller projects off the table at that time. We also shared that there had been a series of alternates that we had bid as well. So the conversation was around, did we want to accept all of the bids, move forward with the projects as they are in option 3? Then there was discussion around, did we want to capture and really look at, did we want to embark on the work with all exception of the Lanigan site work, which was at about $600,000, give or take, about $10,000, about $580 and change, as part of one of the larger site bids. That was an alternate. Or, obviously a third option, is to look at the fact that we're in a situation where with COVID and things like that, the overage was primarily COVID associated. I think we did a good job with pricing and scope of work. I do believe that our scope of work is the right scope of work. Obviously not knowing any expectations with respect to air handling, movement of air through buildings, things like that may be coming out from the federal government. Well, one would expect that if that happened, that we would have to possibly address some of those things, but one would hope there'd be funding that comes along with that. That would be a wonderful thing. You never know. Our state also obviously is facing a large gap as well. So any federal funds, I'm sure, might be driven to schools in a way just to keep supporting us. And then the fourth, obviously, one of the other options is that we can always rebid and look at the entire scope of work and say, is this the right thing? I don't believe that's the right thing to do, because I think we've done a really nice job laying out the work. But the question is, what are those priorities? Obviously, if you're over by a certain amount, then we have to do a very careful look at phase 2 as we're doing our planning as well. But we did the same thing. I was looking at the scope of work that we originally planned way back, and then we reduced it and prioritized then is what we ended up in this plan that we put forward. So with that capture, Robin, exactly kind of where we're at right now, and I'm looking for some guidance. Obviously, at the August 11th meeting, I'd want to bring forward a resolution. One way or the other, because we're getting towards the end of the 45 days, and that would be the second meeting of the month in August would be after our 45 days. And out of fairness to the people that bid and that we want to get working or deciding what we need to do, August 11th would be that final day where we really need to make a final decision at the latest.
So, Brian, is there any information, like, I know during closure periods, you walk into the Home Depots, the Lowe's, and all the materials are really kind of like gone. So people are doing a lot of projects around their home. With the conversation, maybe at the federal level about, any infrastructure work that might eventually happen, are we going to perhaps be looking at costs to go up rather than go down? Because I think the conversation at our last meeting was just, the anticipation. We anticipated lower bids and got higher bids. But if we postpone, do we know? Is there any way to know if there's a forecast for things to kind of continue to climb in terms of cost?
I would ask King or LaChase to comment on that. It's not my world to comment on, although I know that supply chains are being affected as we speak.
Brian, it's Gary. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes,
Yep.
we can.
So the supply chain right now for a lot of the work throughout construction has been compromised, and they continue to work hard to put more of the product out, but it's slow, and there's no reason for us to think that the same scope of work bid at a later time would come any cheaper. There's nothing in the cards that would suggest that. In fact, I can't see interest rates being lower, nor can I see costs of healthcare or even hourly wages going down. So, products are going to cost more, and it's only going to go up in price. And I also think the district runs the risk, if they don't go forward with not taking advantage of the potential, I'll just say the potential, of the opportunity to perform the work in the next 4 to 5 months that may be thrust upon the district because of operationally having to close. And I'm starting to have many school districts hedge their bet that the likelihood is school's going to get interrupted. Thus, they want to take advantage of trying to perform work that normally they wouldn't do until summer, but because they're feeling that there's a greater possibility and we need to get these products, maybe we better hedge our bet on a schedule that's going to allow us to perform certain activities that we wouldn't have been able to do. So I see that costs are going to go up, and I think the opportunity to perform the work, while it's an unfortunate situation, it's one in which I look at it as, I have to look at it as something that to take advantage to try to do the best for you, the client.
Thank you, Gary. Robin?
The issue, as I see it, is the $1.5 million overage. We have to decide how we're going to deal with that. So that means we're either going to come up with another $1,529,000 and a little bit more. And if we can't do that, then we have to take something out of this project. And in the past, and other projects that I've been involved with, we've landed in a similar place and we took things out of the project. Now, unlike the past, this project doesn't have an easy, let's take out a parking lot here, paving over there. We have some real issues with some parking paving that has to be done in this project because it did get taken out multiple times in the past. So the rubber hits the road here for those things to be done. So now it's looking at what can we not do right now that could be put off to the future that won't compromise our overall intent of providing a more safe and secure, healthy environment for our students and staff.
Brian, do you have like a prioritized list with your team where you feel comfortable making a recommendation to the board? You know what I mean? To reprioritize those lists. I know in the past, as Robin has said, that's kind of what the board has received is, some to help educate us as to what, the superintendent's team feels can be delayed, even though we put it in the project for a reason. It was a priority, but now we have to reprioritize.
Mm-hmm. The answer to that is, yeah, we've been prioritizing. I think I'd want to talk with King and LaChase to help us reprioritize our list again to pull that down. They have a much better, from an engineering perspective, the work that needs to be done. Obviously, I tipped my hand, and my initial belief was that because the projects that are working on each of the buildings, as far as the main entrances, are addressing some door issues and some other kinds of high need areas in each of those, as well as really securing our buildings. And one of the buildings that's actually working on the nurse's office, and our nurse's office is an important piece. So that's obviously something that's in the Lanigan scope of work. So, I think there's that one piece. I look, and I think the other piece is we haven't gone back in, and reprioritized the work in phase 2 that was projected. And I know that in the last meeting, we do build in some flexibility. I believe it's the way it kind of is there's some flexibility with costs. Obviously, is it $1.5 million? Obviously not. But I'm sure there's a little bit there. So I think that's where I would be at. I would want to sit with King and with Chase just to reprioritize. I know for me, just what's on my brain right now is there's some projects at GRB, 2 in particular, that must be done as part of that project next year. And the field obviously was a part of that, be the third part. And I looked at the scope of work just before this meeting, and that was, I think we had a little over $4 million projected in the scope of work at GRB. In the initial projections way back last March. It seems like it was forever ago, but it's been over a year. And a little bit more. So that's my answer, Dave. I don't know if King or Carrie, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, no, we haven't prioritized it again recently, since the pandemic really has been in full force. That is a very appropriate next step. Our team with LaChase started to look at it, a little bit and have some internal conversations about the potential prioritization. But those conversations haven't happened with the administrators yet of the district.
Is there time? Is there time to do that before the August 11th?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Carrie,
I mean, a few simple things that are on the phase 2 scope, just for the board's consideration. There are things like toilet rooms on there. Those are maybe the types of things that could potentially fall down slightly lower. Not necessarily health and safety concerns like fire alarm systems and secure entrances and doors.
And those are on phase 2?
Correct. We had toilet room renovations for Fairgrave and GRB.
when we're doing reprioritizing or talking about doing that, is there any delay? I know we're talking about delay in possibly workforce and especially delay in materials in the future. Are we looking at, what I'm worried about is we start a project and then we have to halt it because we're not able to get those materials in that we originally thought. Are we going to discuss, when we're talking about reprioritizing, materials that are becoming more difficult to get and ones that we don't know if we're going to be able to get in phase 2 as part of the plan?
No, you look like you were talking, Bob.
Yeah,
Are you talking? I thought I saw your mouth moving.
I think that's part of the prior. It can be part of the prioritization of the items as well. I mean, I think there's a certain amount of basic building materials that will always be available, but at some point that really determines everything. Basic framing and plumbing, piping, and all that. But I think in the design, that could be something that maybe the mechanical engineer looks at as far as specific types of equipment that maybe is more likely to be impacted depending upon where it's made. Those specialty items we can definitely look at. Even faucets and finishes and all those types of items can be addressed from a design standpoint so that we can make sure that they're available. I mean, nobody has a crystal ball to know what's going to happen, but we can make the best estimate in availability that we can at the time.
As far as phase 1 goes, are we all set to do those and be kind of on the money on phase 1, or is that? I mean,
yeah. I mean, once contracts are awarded, those prices are locked in. So even though that work is happening next year, there's no other than the site work with asphalt and everything else. There's no escalation clause that allows them to come back and charge us more and say, hey, it's a board of sheetrock is now $20 instead of $15. It's not, they're locking in their prices now.
Okay.
So that's, again, an advantage to moving forward. And like Brian said, I think the scopes within these offices especially is, they prioritize the safety and security of the building, that regardless of whatever COVID type design changes are needed in the future, I mean, you're still going to require the safety and security of the building, as well as, it kind of plays into the to COVID requirements as well, because with these new secured entrances, now you don't need a visitor to actually enter your building. Your staff can interact with them with a physical separation of a sliding window. So besides the security, it kind of plays into what I see your future needs would be with any COVID related changes as well. So,
Anyone else have any thoughts? Nick? Microphone, Nick.
No, I don't have any ideas. I'm just listening and taking it all in, hoping something will spark and I can contribute.
Yeah, I thought Lynn's point was good, is that, and it reinforced the fact that the contractors that bid on these positions, and correct me if I'm wrong, Gary or Bob, that they're locked in. As you just reinforced, they're locked into those prices. So that's a positive, and I do think you're not going to see them slide backwards. So I think that's a piece here, and I think we can do is, obviously, like Mr. Cordone brought up, was reprioritize the prioritized, because I looked back to see the original lists way back, and they were a lot longer. Then we prioritized those lists, and that's what resulted in what our referendum was. I mean, so it was a prioritized of the prioritized then. Right. And obviously one of the battles we have as a small city and our financial status is that we can only go out and ask for certain referendums. And this referendum was a solid one at 15,025, but it also, it has $1.3 million, I believe. Is that correct, Kathy? $1.3 million, $1.4 million from capital reserves that was directed, that had been placed in reserves by previous boards in anticipation of future projects, specifically around projects at the athletic complex.
Mrs. Abelgore, do you have any thoughts? I don't know if you're frozen. Are you, Brenda?
Okay.
Are you there?
No, I'm here. My computer's just glitching. So, no, I just, as far as the Lanigan parking lot, is that definitely getting done? I'm just concerned when we go back, especially if more parents are driving their students. How does that look?
That was one of the big question marks when we met, I think, last week, right? And the board decided that they wanted to spend some time with it and reconvene this week. So that Lanigan parking lot parent drop-off area was bid as an alternate. You have the option as a board to decide whether or not you want to award it at this time. Last week we discussed that if you choose not to award it now, we still have other options. We can look at it again down the road, maybe next summer, and see if we still can award it by change order or a similar means to the site contractor. After having a better handle on what phase 2 scope of work looks like after it's reprioritized, and what cost looks like, and what the pandemic looks like. That's one option. Another option would be to abandon it, if you will, as part of phase 1, but then bid it with phase 2. Just defer it until the next phase.
Will it?
And we all kind of stewed on that, I think. Mm-hmm. And so
Brian,
that still needs to be revisited.
Okay.
And also, just if you did choose to do it now, when school starts, you'd be in the middle of construction. I mean, it's this coming Monday is August, so you wouldn't really have that. You'd have disruption at the school in that area, and that would continue at least until, well into October. So you wouldn't have use of that school loop until at least November at this point.
But was that what the original plan? We were going to start it in August anyway, right?
Yeah. But the longer we've waited, it's just going to push it. The original plan was going to be done in the summer, and then what hit the fan. So it's kind of pushed everything. But I just want everybody to be aware that even if we decide to award that, there's still going to be this gap between the beginning of the school and the use of that.
Bob, when I'm looking at this, we bid the site work for 21 as well, right? I mean, that's one of the options on here, correct? For Lanigan. I'm looking at Lanigan site work 21.
Correct. But at the same time, if like Kerry's saying, if you're concerned with budget and you're thinking of pushing it off to 21 anyway, then you could. We have there's methods of looking at it again within the phase 1 portion to get it done next summer, or depending upon the timing of phase 2 bid, including it again as an alternate in phase 2, and still yet getting it done next summer, but maybe through phase 2. So not doing it now doesn't take it completely off the table. It just gives you options. It gives you that extra $600,000 in the coffers for phase 2 to make some decisions, and it doesn't require you to make that decision in the next 2 weeks.
And we could accept the other bids for the inside work now, still, and not take the alternate for Lanigan, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we would suggest just taking the base bids of all 3 offices, and then whatever site work you want. Even the other alternates, the gym floors, the roof, all those other things. The way we awarded those, the way the contracts are now, that even if we award them later, it would not have no impact on who the contractor is. So, not that they would hold the prices, because there's only so long they can hold those prices, but at least you have like a budget number of where you would be, so that towards the end, if we haven't spent a lot of the contingency money, or you've made you reprioritize some of the phase 2 stuff, there's money there for those things. But again, you have the option later. You don't need to commit to it now.
I, for one, Brian, just so I'm on the record, I think the Lanigan parking project is really an important one in the district. I know we've talked about the safety issues, the parents of parking, kids crossing. I'm just going to put it out there that I think it's one of the more important things that I'm in favor of supporting. So I know timing isn't the greatest right now, but that's my one opinion of I'm in strong support of keeping that.
Didn't we discuss doing Lanigan because it's out of the way? That site work wouldn't interfere with the busing?
It's the least impactful. You couldn't do, like, for example, work here at the junior high and even be able to open. So yes, it is off to the side, and we could work around that because it's not on the street. Yes, I believe so. It's the least impactful site work.
Yeah. That's why it's the only one that's kind of available to do now, because it's like you said, we're not disrupting what already exists. We're taking, I think, what's the basketball court and moving that, and then creating a whole new area.
Right. Lynn, you had a question?
Well, I just got confused listening to everybody else, because in lieu of the fact that we're not even sure what school's going to look like for this year, or if it even goes through, which some type of schooling will, but if the pandemic starts up again, do we have to close down again? I'm not sure that's a priority. That's my opinion, to get it done immediately. Probably nobody likes it, but that's my opinion.
I think Brian touched on it when we started, was that the fact is that Lanigan site work is very valuable. And there are some ventilation and fire alarm issues, say at the high school, that we need to really think about, and that might give us some options that we won't have if we accept Lanigan.
I'm talking about the driveway there. I'm not talking about the inside work at Lanigan. I believe we should do that. Yeah. But as far as the new driveway at this point, I don't know. That's the way I feel about it.
Lynn, and I respect and I can their opinion, and I totally understand the perspective. My feeling was, via gymnasium work and things like that again probably won't be used during the pandemic, with schooling and things like that. To me, a lot of parents are going to be dropping kids off and accessing that bus loop. There's a lot of parents that are going to be trying to avoid the buses because of the pandemic. So that's why I was favoring that.
And I agree with you, but then tell me what we could take away that's not as valuable. I think that's what we need to talk about. I personally think because I agree with you. I honestly agree with you that I've always thought that. I went to that school when I was young. So it's always been an issue with busing and driving. So I do believe that it needs it. But we do have to think about that $1 million. So we've got to figure out how. And so, Brian, I guess it's up to you. What do you think we could do without? And I guess what I'm saying to you, if you want us to vote on this or to have it all ready by the 11th, are we going to have enough time to understand really what we're going to do away with?
Yeah, it seems like a recommendation from you, Brian, would be a starting point for us.
Yes, I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Thank you, David.
That's why I asked last week if the board wanted the committee to go back and sit, and the committee being Nick and I representing the board with Brian and King and LaChase, and have go over those priorities and work with Brian to help him develop a recommendation for this board. Now, if we do that, in all fairness, I mean, there is that timeline. Can you live with the recommendation that he brings back? There probably won't be a lot of lead time into the 11th.
Well, I trust in his opinion because he really has got the scope of everything that's going on there. So,
right. He knows the district.
Right.
Yeah, especially with you and Nick, knowing the concerns and advocating, I'm totally fine with that and you guys making a recommendation.
I am also.
Me too.
Yeah, we can get a meeting set. I'd have to work with King and LaChase and Nick and Robin. Between next Wednesday and Friday, we can get a meeting, I'm sure, on the books to be able to do that. We may have to do something more in person. I don't know if we need to lay things out a little bit differently so we can see things. And we've been doing in-person meetings for a while here now, with social distancing, of course, and masks
as well.
And masks as well. And so I think we need to do that. I know I'm tied up through at least Tuesday next week, but Wednesday through Friday, we can get something out to the board. Obviously, Mike alluded to one of the big projects. At the high school, there are some things I think we need to look at the phase 2 projects. And then that'll allow us to prioritize and give you some feedback to help you make a more informed decision. So we can do that.
That would be great.
King LaChase, I can coordinate something between Wednesday and Friday next week. I'll have Gene work on that starting tomorrow morning. Did you hear that, Gene? The look I always get. Okay. So we'll get them the book. Yes,
Brian,
Gary.
if I could, Wednesday is a great day for me to put up first. How's that? I'd say that for me, that's going to work best for me. Just up if there's any way.
Then we will start with August 5th as our coordination day. How's that, Gary?
I will like it.
All right. So yeah, Gene will reach out tomorrow and we'll coordinate. And that's better because then we have an opportunity to frame the work and get it out to our board so they have multiple days to have for any questions. And then we can also build, if necessary, we may have to have some representation for our third board meeting in a row from King and LaChase if there's any final questions or things like that. That would allow us, if we have things out to the board by Friday, an opportunity to digest, ask questions, call us, interact, and then be able to provide answers to the questions. And then we can button some things up on Tuesday, the 11th, and hopefully pass the resolution that afternoon or that evening with respect to the work. Does that sound like a plan?
Thank you.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, so our intent will be to go back and reprioritize, and we have to lose 1.5 million and a little more out of this overage and get us down to what we can afford. Okay, I'm good with that.
All righty. All right. Well, King and LaChase, thank you so much. You're more than welcome to stay online for our next part of our meeting. Anyway, it's been the much anticipated. You were a great precursor to the next meeting here, or the next part of our meeting. So thank you so much. All right. Well, I guess one of the hot topics here, not only in the Fulton City School District, but the entire nation and world. And here we are talking about our Fulton City School District tonight. Dan, can you put up the presentation, please? Okay. So what we're going to be presenting tonight is the framework. Obviously, and we'll go through this in just a moment, but there's a lot of work associated with this, and we'll get hopefully that up there. If not, I can get started in just a second here, everybody. Maybe a little longer. Technology always works well when I need it, right?
I think.
It's coming. It's spinning.
Yeah.
It's spinning, and we have a can you put it in presentation mode, I believe?
Here it comes.
And if we can go to screen number 1, please. Alrighty. All right, well, good evening, everybody. This is our Return to Learning Plan framework as of July 29th, the year 2020. Why do I say July 29th, 2020? Is that this plan, and we met with Commissioner Tahoe, soon to be moving out of her position, but Commissioner Tahoe was not only here in Fulton last week visiting our program, but we also had a small cities and meeting yesterday. And one of the things she reinforced was the fact that if our plan even looks the same on August 15th that it looks today, or when we submit by the 31st, that would be very surprising. And this has got to be a fluid plan, a flexible plan. There's a lot of parts to the guidance, and we'll share pieces. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done between July 29th and when we will open school in September. So Dan, can you go to the next slide, please? I always like to remind us of our mission and vision here in the Fulton City School District. Doesn't matter if we're in school, out of school, our mission and vision is the one in this, they are the same. We do not change. Our goal is to maintain our high standards of excellence here. And our goal is to foster hope and resilience for the future. And this has been a time where fostering hope and resilience for the future is a challenge, because there's a great deal of fear of the unknown. We don't know what's coming next. We don't know what's in the areas around us. So this is an important time for us to maintain our laser-like focus. Our beliefs are at the center of everything that we do, and they need to stay there. Every decision that we make, we come back, and that first one is pivotal, that all students can learn. And then look at what our 5th one is, and very applicable. Positive, safe, and supportive environment is vital. That's one of our beliefs, and look how our beliefs are able to be fluid and flexible enough to address the times that we have now. And the community support, this is many hands raising this plan. There's many. We're all the responsible persons. We all have a part in this, no matter if we're a student, a parent, a staff member, a superintendent. Doesn't matter. Any member of our organization, we all have a role and responsibility in this lift of creating a safe environment, safe learning environment in which our kids will just exceed and flourish every day. Our New York State guardrails and regulations, if you haven't had the opportunity, we've posted them on our website as well. The governor orders and guidelines came out on the 16th of July. That was the word voluminous. That's 145 pages of guidance. There was also a Department of Health piece of guidance that came out a couple days before that. There was 23 pages from the Department of Health. We also had the advantage here. I don't know if it's an advantage or not. I think it is. We decided to run an extended school year here. We're 3.5 weeks in with an in-person program, but we took guidance from summer camp. We took all that guidance. We looked at other states, and our guidance that we did was actually pretty dead on to what is in the guidance from the state. So I'm very proud of our team, and we're learning a lot with that. Also, one of the things we have to do is we have to turn in our assurances that our plans will be compliant on the 31st. That's the day after tomorrow. Obviously, we'll do assurance, but there's a lot of work. There's processes, protocols that'll go along with that. Health formulas and thresholds. We put that in there because the governor had mentioned that, to keep schools open, you'd have to be looking at a daily infection rate of 5% over 14 days. And he talked about regional. He didn't talk about specific schools. So I don't know if that would be pertaining to the CNY region. So that's all 50 some odd districts that would be a part of that. Obviously, we're one of those 50 some odd districts. Schools close when there's a rate greater than 9%. So he's put out over a 7-day average after August 1st. So he's placed those pieces out there. The key will be the governor's reopening decision. He has indicated that he will make a decision during the week of August 1st through 7th. And again, it could happen any point during that time frame. Next slide, please. Just to give you an overview of our development of the plan to this point, we received the guidance on the 16th. We've done a family survey. Thank you to everybody who participated. You'll see the numbers in just a few minutes. Amazing, the number of participants. Our administrative team has been going full steam since the week of July 20th, really breaking down this guidance into bits and pieces and building it back up to what it looks like here in the Fulton district. There are clear musts that have to take place, and then a lot of considerations and that we're also strongly considering. Work groups were convened, and we'll show those in just a second. Meeting with bargaining unit presidents. We've had a couple meetings now. We actually had another one this afternoon, so the 22nd and the 29th. We've had meetings we had a staff survey on the reopening. We had great participation, great anecdotal feedback on that as well. District site-based meeting, which has representatives from all the schools. Tonight's Board of Education workshop. We plan, our goal is to submit a plan tomorrow, post it on our website, which is required, and communicate with all our stakeholders. And we hope to communicate something after this meeting this evening. Tomorrow, and then the 31st is the deadline. I always like to build a little bit of a buffer. So the 31st is actually the deadline for submission. I already mentioned the governor. And obviously, because of the fluidity of the situation and the flexibility, we have to closely monitor. We will revise and we will update stakeholders as the plan evolves. This is a work in progress. There's a lot of data and information that we're going to get and collect over the next few weeks, months, and hopefully not years. Next slide, please. The work groups align very closely with the guidance. Goes from health and safety, facilities, child nutrition, transportation, SEL. I will tell you that one of the things that that's been very clear from the New York State Education Department is first is the safety and security of our staff and students, number one. Number two is social emotional. When we left school here March 13th and we haven't been back together since, and learning looks very different and the world is looking very different, and there's a lot of questions in people's minds, animosity, fears, and all of that together. We're trying to create a plan that provides the framework that allows us to ensure that we're addressing those supports that everybody needs, including the superintendent. This is when you wake up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning thinking about this each and every day, because number one for me is the safety of our staff and our students. Number one. There's nothing that challenges that, and that's what's important in this plan. And a tight plan that's progress monitored very closely to make sure that we're sticking with every piece of it with as designed is essential, and making the necessary adjustments is essential. And then you see other pieces there: the school schedule, budget. Obviously, we're sitting in a world that right now, I believe I saw something from the state that we're $13.8 billion in revenues low. And so obviously those projections were coming out as early as March and April, and they continue to be very consistent. So we're hoping for the federal stimulus and hopefully the support we need, because that could add another variable to this whole situation that we're addressing at this point in time. And then there's other committees there. I'm not going to read them all, but it goes right down through teacher and principal evaluation systems. And as you can see, there's not a part of the organization that's not touched within the scope of work that we're having to address. Next slide, please. Thank you. And now I believe this is the part where I'm turning it over to you, Dan. This part is yours.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everybody. We really want to thank all of you out in the public as well, for the enormous amount of input and feedback that you've contributed, which has really been the basis of our planning. We've held 9 focus groups that included 190 participants. So we've covered various types of stakeholder groups. We included all of our building site-based team members. We've included students, parents, teachers, our support staff and ancillary staff, including bus drivers, as well as our administrators. We took careful notes in each of these focus groups. We asked the same questions of each of those different stakeholder groups, and we compiled all of those into a set of what amounted to priorities and concerns related to opening. Additionally, we've conducted 3 surveys to staff and parents with 3,163 total responses. It's an incredible response rate. And from a statistics standpoint, it really gives us a basis from which to make some reliable projections for the overall sense of the community. First was our Learning at Home feedback survey. Now, this was a survey that we used to evaluate our efforts in the spring, initial COVID closure, a time that we really think of as crisis instruction. This was when we had to flip on a dime from March 13th, Friday, being in school as usual, to March 16th, beginning our school closure. Next was our parent reopening survey. And so this was the survey that really started looking ahead, asking questions about parents' intentions and concerns with regard to the 2020-21 school year beginning in September. And we asked very similar questions to our staff regarding reopening. We're going to take you through not every question, not the results of every question, but really the main ones that helped us to measure our capacity, or how many students we could accommodate with in-person instruction, as well as those questions that helped inform the type of model that we'll end up with in our initial plan. So first, looking backward to spring at our parents' perceptions of our initial learning at home efforts. We were pleased to see that the public found our communication at least in many cases very good, 62%, or satisfactory. So over 90% of the public found that our communication efforts were either satisfactory or very good, and we're very proud of that, and we're committed to keeping that steady flow of communication going throughout the transitions we anticipate for this year. Next, a very important question for us was related to the learning platform that our students used online, Google Classroom. We were very curious to find out how easy this was for parents to manage, how well they could navigate that and understand what their children needed in order to be able to help them with their online learning. And we were very pleased with this also. We honestly were not sure what type of response we would get. But based on the response, that approximately 75% or more of our families found this either very good or satisfactory, we're committing to sticking with Google Classroom for K-12.
Dan,
K-12. Yep.
What month was this survey done? I'm just wondering if it was done in the very beginning or at the end.
This one was after the fact. I think we put this out. I think we closed it in mid-July.
Okay.
Yeah, it was
now that's a good question, because that's your point is reflected in many of the comments, that some of the respondents replied that I'd never used it in the beginning, but my children were familiar with it, and by the end I was very familiar. But what we also a general feeling was that families of multiple children enjoyed having a single platform in which to find all of their students' classes.
Dan?
Yep.
I just am concerned. I know it's a very small percentage that responded that they didn't have access either to a device or Google Classroom. And so I'm wondering, we're working on that. So that issue should go away.
Well, we certainly hope it would go away. So we're at that's at about 1% of our students. We made every effort to ensure that all families had at least one device, as well as internet access through the distribution of hotspots. There actually end up being certain situations in which specific needs make it necessary for a student to have an option that's not Google Classroom or not an online device. In some cases, there are specific student or family needs that still necessitated the use of paper resources, for example.
Yeah, but this is saying because they didn't have access to the internet or device. It's not like they chose to not, I know certainly some families chose to not, to use paper, but this one's saying because they didn't have access. Do we know specifics and how we can make sure that these families have access moving forward?
We will. Prior to
Dan, I'm going to have Mr. Lisi made a comment. I want him to comment on that. I see he's got something.
Sure. So great question. So one of the things that we're going to do before we begin is survey parents again and reach out to parents where this might be an issue. We had a few rare instances where even though we provided access points, they were in a location we just couldn't get a signal. So we're working on doing that and trying to work with other providers where that might ease the situation.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, we had very few that where that was the case.
And that question really doesn't get to like the families that have multiple children in the household and they're working from home. And, I know I shared that experience before where, I was getting bumped off of meetings and I think they may have had difficulty connecting to when you're competing for the signal.
Sure.
Same.
Sure. Again, we're doing the best we can with connectivity. That's
No, I know.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if we can drill down a little bit more in that area to find out exactly what the issues, how we might support families.
And
we absolutely will.
You're pretty aware of who needs it too, correct? That had an issue.
We've tried, we certainly tried to reach out to some. We have. I can't remember a single call where we've had someone say, I don't have connectivity, and we haven't tried to resolve the issue. So we're not currently aware of anyone that doesn't. So without actually reaching out to every single family and trying to assess that. So, but that's what we're going to be doing moving forward.
Right. And the reality is we still have corners of our district in which Wi-Fi access is very difficult.
Right.
Next, we move into questions related to the instructional experience. We were, again, very pleased to see that, close to 81% of our families found the quality of the instruction either satisfactory or very good. And that about 69% of our families also found the level of opportunities to interact or connect with other classmates was very good or satisfactory. Now, these were questions in which the comments were extremely useful and revealing to us. Many of the questions, or many of the open-ended responses here included a real appreciation for our teachers' efforts and really the agility that they demonstrated, their ability to adapt from in-person instruction to a whole new world for many of our teachers and students of online learning. At the same time, it was clear that our families, as well as our teachers, expect that a return to online learning needs to be something that is more reflective of the instructional experience that students receive in the classroom, that it needs to be more interactive, that there need to be more opportunities for students to receive feedback and for bi-directional feedback and interaction. A way to summarize that is to say that there is the understanding that Google Classroom needs to be something more than a repository for assignments, okay? That it really needs to be a platform for full instruction. Moving on to reopening. So switching gears from last year to the new year that's beginning. First, we wanted to gauge the level of comfort and also get a sense of it. There are medical needs that might preclude a family from sending a student for in-person instruction. So we asked if New York State and local public health officials believe it is safe to allow in-person instruction, will you send your child to school? And what we found was that close to 70% of our families either say yes, they will, or they're leaning towards yes. And Mr. Palvino actually was, Mr. Palvino really kind of nailed that proportion. It's a proportion that 30 or so percent of families believe that they won't send their children or that they can't, that we're seeing reflected in many types of surveys that are being conducted. This is a really important number for us because in order to determine what extent of in-person instruction we could offer, we really needed a sense of how many of our students would be returning to us in person. And this ends up being a figure that we use to help us estimate or calculate our capacity for in-person instruction. Oh, I'm sorry. Next, we presented families with 4 of the common models of hybrid instruction that we've seen, kind of widely talked about. We did not include the option of 100% in-person instruction because we really didn't want to give any illusions about the potential for a return to normal. Unfortunately, this year, it's simply not possible. We simply don't have the capacity from a space and transportation and even, potentially staffing standpoint to be able to offer in-person instruction every day as usual for our 3,200 students. So we offered our families 4 variations of hybrid models in which to express their preference. And I'm sorry that these are cut off a bit, but I can explain those to you. Top option was one in which elementary students are mainly in person and secondary students mainly online. Of the plans that we've seen come out already, we've seen variations of this. Next, all students in person. Let's see. I'm sorry. All students in person, but only for a couple days a week. We've seen this model referred to as an AABB model or an ABAB model. This is where students attend for, in most cases, 2 days a week in person. Next, this would be all students in person sometimes, but alternating weeks. This is a surprisingly more popular model than we've seen. Our research shows that that's a very difficult model for which to find childcare. And finally was the model of all students completely online. So as we can see, none of these possible models received more than 50% of our public's feelings that they'd be really acceptable options. And we understand that. Clearly, a return to in-person instruction is the ideal, and we can't wait to get there. But by breaking some of this data down by school level, it was very helpful to us to arrive at our final scheduling model. We asked families about face coverings or masks, and 78% of our families said that they would provide their children with their own face coverings. We asked about their transportation needs, and we found that only 36% of our families say that they will need to use school-provided busing. So again, this is an important figure in starting to calculate or estimate our true capacity. With this question regarding transportation and the question about returning to school in person, we will contact every family directly for that specific, for their specific responses to those questions. Okay, we're working with estimates now to develop this schedule, and we will follow up on this for specific details for every student. And in that same outreach, we can also ask that question about internet connectivity. Like I said, we asked very similar or the same types of questions to gather the same types of information of our staff. First and foremost, the Department of Health and State Ed guidance lists multiple medical conditions that would make either the employee medically vulnerable or high risk, or if they have a family member at home with some of these conditions, they might also fall into one of these categories. So we asked our staff members and all types of staff if they fell into one of these categories, and 35% indicate that yes, they do. Again, this is something that we'll need to follow up specifically with staff members to get the specific information on whether they'll be able to return to in-person work. We presented the same collection of models of scheduling models to our staff, and we received similar results to what we received from families, that although there are slight preferences in some areas, none of these options is the perfect model for all. We asked our staff about face coverings, and 35% of our staff indicate that they will need face coverings provided by the district. It's a large percentage, and when you extend that need by each day for each staff member over the course of the year, you can see how the quantity of necessary face coverings adds up quickly. And of course, that contributes to our capacity. And also, as part of our plan, and which you may have already experienced if you've had the chance to visit our extended school year program, is the issue of a daily health screening. So this involves taking one's temperature and answering those 4 famous COVID questions related to having symptoms or having been in contact or other exposure to COVID. And 90% of our staff members say that they would be able to complete this before work. So again, this is when you extend this type of procedure out over all of our staff, you can see that this is a very time-consuming effort, and we need to time-consuming and labor-intensive effort. So we needed to have a sense of, is this something we're going to have in place physically in the building every day, or can staff members take care of that at home?
Dan, is there a plan for collecting that information electronically? So okay.
Yep, there is.
And who's gonna be do we know yet who's gonna be monitoring?
Yes, we're building that into our plans at the building levels. principals and school nurses are key parts of that monitoring because it directly influences the folks in their building. And at the district level, we also, as part of our plan, will appoint a coordinator of these procedures.
Dan, can we get to, I mean, the survey is fascinating, but can we get to the plan? Can we?
Absolutely. We're getting right to it. We wanted folks to really have an understanding that their voices are valued. They truly were a part of this.
Right.
All right.
Back over to Mr. Pelvey.
All right. Well, here's the meat and potatoes. Thank you. Again, I think it's important to always understand the framework that these decisions weren't made in a vacuum, that we've really tried to collect information in a time where it's hard to get to people. So just a reminder, we use the plan, all the things that we've been doing, that other pieces were the Department of Health, the Strategic Coherence Plan, County Health Department. I haven't mentioned them, we're working closely with them. Lots of research, region, nation, county, world, and obviously our extended school year, and thank you to that crew. Next slide, please. So the hybrid model, you're gonna see it in just a moment. And our assessed capacity doesn't allow for 100% in person. Dan just alluded to that. In other words, we can't bring 3,200 students in each and every day for 5 days a week. However, we've made a commitment to try to figure out to ensure that all of our students get FaceTime. That was very clear through the focus groups and the data, the information that we received through the surveys, was that we needed to have some FaceTime built in, opportunities for that physical engagement back and forth, as well as having a balanced asynchronous and synchronous remote learning possibility as well. And that was very clear, the feedback that we got. It's subject to change. If new information, Dan talked about, we're going to be collecting information. People didn't have a response. They didn't have a way to respond to something because they didn't have something tangible to look at. You're basing it on the experiences and the thoughts you were having. So now that the district and all of our families and staff will have a chance to look at this, then we'll send another survey out. We'll send out we'll glean more information through letters, phone call, whatever. We're going to make sure, we need to know what every student is going to be doing, as well as staff. And at present, want to make it clear, there isn't explicitly allowed for remote only at this point, although that has been out there publicly. Right now we're waiting for further guidance from the state. Dan, next slide, please. Can you put on our model, please?
Right. Let's see. Oh.
Feel like we should have a drum roll or something, right?
That's good.
As we're getting it up here on the slide. All right. Had my eyes examined yesterday. I can finally see that. Thank you. All right. So everything's done. Moving on. So here's our hybrid model. Dan, let's stop right about there. I can see it. So based on the guidance, this is the hybrid learning model appears to be the best to address the health, safety, and learning needs of our students. In bold here, you'll see this model is subject to change based on new data or guidance. And I know I keep saying that over and over again. This is evolving based on data that we receive and that we collect, guidance we receive from the state. So if we exceed our current capacity projections, and we talked too big, at 70%, thank you, then we need to look back at that. So again, we based it right around that 72%. So in other words, that may be required to reduce the proposed number of days in in-person construction. Slide down a little bit, please. So I'll give you a little bit of an overview, and then we'll go down to the bottom here. What we're looking at is students in pre-K, UPK, will attend 4 days per week. Thank you to Ms. Connors and her team that have been working on this. They'll be in school Tuesday through Fridays, 2.5 hours each day, morning, AM, PM sessions will be available. Still working through that. We received further clarification from the state in actually the last 12 hours with respect to UPK. Students in kindergartens through grade 5 will attend in person 4 days per week, Tuesday through Friday at their assigned elementary school. School day will be 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Again, we have to adjust for cleaning of buses, things like that, between runs. Students in grades 6 through 8 will attend in person on alternating schedule 2 days. We have a grid in just a moment per week at the Fulton Junior High. For grade 6, right now we're looking at their school day being 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. and grades 7 and 8 will be 7:30 to 12:30. right now, because we can't actually fit all 3 grade levels in here at the same time. And so 6th grade would be on that, is why we're looking at that 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Type of piece. The students in grades 9 through 12 will attend in person 1 day per week at G. Ray Bodley. The school day for students in grades 9 through 12 would be 7:30 to 12:30. Our students with disabilities, please slide it down a bit there, Dan. Students and disabilities in self-contained classes and some English language learners, very clear in the guidance that we have to be very cognizant of the wide range of needs that we have for our students. And from A to Z and every single student in between, we've got a range of needs here. And if anything we've learned from extended school year, we're finding that some of our students who may have struggled the most with online platforms, things like that, due to their disabilities, are actually re-engaging this summer in a very positive kind of way. So we learned a lot from that. Our medically vulnerable high-risk students or families will provide an equitable learning at home model based on their documented individual needs. Yes.
I'm sorry. Students with disabilities in grades 7 to 12 that are Tuesday through Friday, what times would they be going for the 7th?
Dan, can you slide back up there a little bit? Our students with disability, a little bit further, right there. In person all 4 days a week, Ms. Cooper. And I'm a student here at let's say here at the junior high. I'm in a special class, or my IP dictates that level of support. I would be here Tuesday through Friday in the hours indicated, 7:30 to 12:30 p.m.
Okay, so 7:30 to 12:30.
They would follow the same schedule. I can be much briefer. They would follow the same length of day.
Okay, perfect. And what about students that are going into ICT classes? Would those be considered students with disabilities and self-contained, or those?
So those students, and again, that'll be in the more extensive plan you'll see tomorrow, but on the ICT and the CT range, those students will follow the same schedule. So let's say if I'm an 8th grader who's receiving services, I'm getting ICT services in a resource setting. I would be getting listen to me, integrated co-teacher setting. I would be receiving my services during that time frame when I'm in school on days, let's say Thursday and Friday when I'm in session here, and then we would extend those accommodations to create that access. I think it's a great question. Obviously, my background lends itself to this a little bit, is that obviously we have to take a good look and make sure that the kids are getting everything that they need. So that'd be one of those things we need to monitor very closely. And as you are aware, Committee on Special Education always can convene and we can adjust for a student's needs.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Great question. Dan, can you slide down a little bit further? The Online Monday, we'll go into that a little bit more on the next page, but Online Mondays, as well as other days, we'll talk about that in just a moment, so I'm not going to go into that. The Fulton faculty and staff will be working from schools every day on Mondays. While all students are learning online, educators will review student progress, provide feedback, participate in professional development and collaboration, and plan learning for the week ahead. This is huge. One of the things that we got back from feedback from the different focus groups, didn't matter which group it was, the importance of professional development and preparedness was essential, that we're learning how to use all these platforms, how to teach in a synchronous and asynchronous world, and really engaging and figuring out how to instruct kids differently. In fact, one of the greatest things that we learned is our professional learning communities, or our PLCs, were some of the most positive feedback that we've gotten. And that was a program we've had in place since the mid-2000s. I believe it was 2006, before my time, but been here a long time and a part of our community here. And they did some amazing work from March through June. And so we've learned that that's key. And finally, this plan limits the number of students in classrooms, on buses, and in the hallways at one time, and it's subject to change. So this in grid format will help you a little bit better, because I'm long-winded and I talk way too much. So to give you in a grid format, which is a whole lot easier to take a peek at here, you see UPK, you see on Mondays, online for every grade level, UPK through 12th grade. Then you see, as I said, Tuesday through Friday, all UPK students in person, and you remember they had a certain number of hours, 2.5. Then you have your all K through 5 students in person. And with that, you have them going, I believe, from 9 to 2, because it's not written right there, but above. And then on 6th grade through 8th grade, Group A. So if I'm little Brian and I'm going to school and I'm in Group A, I would be attending the Fulton Junior High on days Tuesday and Wednesday. And then on Thursday and Friday, I would be at home doing my online remote learning program. If I'm a Group B student, I would be online on Monday, like all kids are. Then I'd be online Tuesday and Wednesday. And I would conclude my week in person here at the Fulton Junior High. And then if you remember, I said there was 2 different times at this point in time, 7th and 8th graders, 7:30 to 12:30, 6th graders here at the junior high would be 9 to 2. Why are the 6th graders here? Because we cannot we do not have enough space in our elementary schools to be able to do that. The students will be in a separate wing, separate from other students. And as you see, we also at this point in time have kept them on an elementary schedule, meaning they also ride the bus with elementary students. That's the plan as designed on July 29th.
Brian,
then,
I just have a couple questions. One of the points that Chris Todd made with the BOCES board was that school districts in the county were looking at perhaps dividing the students' days that they report by the alphabet for supervision purposes. Did we not need to do that with this model?
When you say that, I know you mean that in the city model. Yeah, go ahead. Can you explain a little bit further for supervision? I guess my question.
Well, like if there were families with high school aged kids and elementary kids, or kids that were old enough that could supervise, to accommodate those families that might have a concern, for if they were working, the parents, and to have an older sibling perhaps home with a younger sibling. Was that anything that it looks like from this model that everybody's in school, so it shouldn't be an issue for us to have paid attention to that consideration?
We actually did consider that. We actually went through that model, we tried to take a good look about how to do that. If you look at that in the morning right now, and if we were in the old world that we're not in, but in the old world, our high schools came in first in the morning, and then our elementary kids went later on a later bus, an hour later. Now what will happen is the high school kids are actually home 4 out of the 5 days. They're all online on Monday on that day, and high school kids would be available 3 out of the other 4 days. So that it accommodates a number of different pieces there. We also went with Mondays because as far as our full online day, because that allowed it, we felt like with all and it seems like many school districts in the other county, as well, Onondaga, as well as Oswego County and others, Wednesday seems to be a go-to day. So that'll be a day where I think there might be more flexibility with childcare. But our high school kids will be home 4 out of 5 days. Our middle school kids would be home 3 out of 5 days. And our elementary kids would be home 1 day. So I think it lends itself in a vertical and a horizontal way. I don't know if for me that makes sense in my brain, horizontally and vertically, to do that. But Dave, we took that into consideration. It was a big part of our thinking.
And one of the other questions I had, I understood the special ed, that we're meeting the needs by having them in school. Are the support services being provided virtually, or are those still person to person?
So if the person is a great question, Dave. If you're a student who receives, let's say, related services, and what those are, as I throw jargon at everybody, are occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech and language services, mobility services for some kids. If a student is we're going to make every effort for them to receive their services while they're in person. Those of you that aren't aware, many kids get those types of services, like a speech and language, twice a week or 3 times a week. And we'll look at those frequencies. So I know our director of special education and her team, and you'll see it a little bit more fleshed out in the actual written plan when we get it ready to submit. But yes, the students look at that. And then students are complete remote. Obviously, we're going to consider ways to provide those services to kids. We did do that online this spring, but we could look at things like having students come in specifically for that service, possibly, depending on the type of level of need for that student.
And one other question based upon the data that Dan shared with us, those families that are perhaps choosing not to send their child at all, who is going to be the teacher of record for them if our teachers are teaching? Are they going to be assigned as though they would be, like if perhaps we wind up in a scenario where they will attend, everybody will attend full days, will they have the same teacher out of school when they're learning from, distance learning as they would when they're physically in the building?
I think that's our goal. I don't know if anybody on my team, Betsy, you want to add anything to that? That's, I believe, is the goal that we're trying to do.
Yeah, we're working through that right now, Dave, because of the logistical piece. So we'll be coming back with more details on that.
Okay.
But currently the Ed department doesn't have a remote learning only option. Is that correct?
That is correct.
But they still have to have access to a teacher, correct?
That's right.
Correct.
That's
when they're
correct.
home, for kids who are, if they're in session on Monday or on Tuesday, and then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, they're home. Absolutely.
Yeah.
How is Monday going to work with multi-student families as far as everybody being online at the same time?
That'll be the same challenge, Nick. That's a great question that we had before. I mean, this year during the closure, we increased the number of Chromebooks. Dom can jump in. I know we increased the number of. I'm going to stop talking because I'm learning that I need to make sure I delegate. Mr. Lisi, please answer the question with respect to technology.
By all means, Mr. Polvino, go right ahead. No, kidding. Actually, we're going to go full one-to-one.
Okay.
So that'll take care of that issue.
Dem, are students going to be expected, the students that were issued Chromebooks in the spring, expected to bring them back and forth between the classroom and home?
They are. The discussion we're having right now is what age groups would do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's why I have Mr. Lisi answer the questions and not I. So thank you, sir.
Okay.
Yeah. And if you see on the right-hand side there, and then lastly, obviously, faculty and staff working at the school each day. And then obviously you see on the right there, we will contact families to determine each student's participation in this proposed hybrid learning model. That will drive, if we end up with 90% that want to come in because they just think this plan is great and the state is in maintaining good shape. Obviously we watch and many school districts and states are struggling right now with the pandemic. We went through our time. However, we know that at any given day, at any given moment, that if we let our slides and not focus on what we're supposed to be doing in our state, then we could slide just as quickly. And it's something we're very cognizant of. At present, as I mentioned, there's not the remote learning, although I do see other districts that seem to be putting that out there. I tend to be very conservative, and we follow the guidance for us. And I see it sliding, possibly that direction. I think we're going to have to make sure that we provide access for all kids, no matter what. And I think, to me, that's the most important. Every single student in our district has to get the best access possible in this plan.
Brian, as you talk about access, and that's important, but being that this is going to be the way things look for this year, how are we going to handle attendance with the online? Are we going to be perhaps, I don't know the right word I want to use, but have a consistent process and talk to our students about attendance being just as important for online as it is in physical setting?
Absolutely great question, Ms. Griffin. Ms. Geithner, this is your realm, and I remember as we were putting the document together, I saw some wonderful things. Could you talk on this, please? Not hearing you, Jerry.
Yes, I can. I'm sorry. My mute button would not unmute. So, Robin, could you clarify your question for me a little bit? I want to be sure that I'm answering it the right way here.
I'm trying to be careful here because I didn't ask the question this spring about how we were accounting for attendance. But because we're kicking off the school year in this model, I'm wondering if we will be more, I hate the word strict comes to mind, but that's really not the word I want, but consistent and the expectation for attendance online as well as in person at school.
Okay, that's what I thought you were asking, but I wanted to be very clear. So we are required to devise a method to track attendance, whether students are learning in person or whether they are learning remotely. So part of the next steps of our process will be to come to a consensus on what the definition of attendance is for the remote learning portion of the day, or of the school week. So if students are online, for example, at the junior high, they're online 3 out of the 5 days in a school week. Obviously, the in-person attendance is going to be taken in our traditional manner using our school tool system. You're present for that instruction, or you're absent. In the remote environment, we are obligated to define what participation in attendance looks like and still record that attendance in our student management system.
Thank you. One other thing I wanted to say here, this is a lot of work. I know people have been working for weeks on this, even before we were told we had to have a plan. I just have to say, for the benefit of anybody that's listening, I'm pretty confident that there's going to be some folks that aren't going to be really happy with this plan. But I want to say to everyone, this plan was constructed with the notion that we're trying to help 4,000 people between staff, students, and their families have a school year that can be as consistent as possible, knowing that it's probably not going to be all that consistent as the year progresses. The flexibility, we are probably going to see some shutdown time based on what I read. I could be wrong. It would be great. I want to be wrong. Let me say that. I would love to be wrong. But all I'm asking is, I'm asking everyone for great patience. If ever there was a time for patience, this is the time to be patient. I want you to reach out to the school if you are a parent or a student. If you are in need and we're not helping, and we're not helping you meet that need, perhaps we don't understand what that need is. Please, please reach out to your building principals, your teachers. There's lots of folks. Do not talk to us. We need people talking as much as, probably more than ever, so that we can do the best job we can for all of our students. So please communicate as much as you need to until we understand what it is we're not hearing, so we can help address problems. But again, my appreciation to everybody for all of this. This is a big deal. I know everyone's been waiting for this. There's going to be questions, I'm sure. So as a reminder to anyone listening, if you have a question based on anything you've seen here this evening, please feel free to email clerk, C-L-E-R-K, at Fulton, Cinric, CNYRIC.org. I need you to let us know what it is you need to know from us. We have folks here that want to answer your questions, and we have a lot of problem solvers that want to solve problems. So we can do that best if you let us know what those issues are. That's all I have to say. I'll have more questions as we progress along, I'm sure, but I want to thank you all again for all of this information.
Hey, and I'm sorry, Robin, I just wanted, while we were talking about attendance with Ms. Geithner, I just wanted to double check on this to make sure I'm understanding correctly. Mrs. Geithner, if you can explain to me, for those students who are online that are on the line learners and doing the 3, we're attending the 3 out of the 5 days like you just had mentioned, when will we as a district have guidance on what is considered the attendance, and how are we going to be able to communicate that to the families? I know you're currently working on that. I'm just trying to see if we have a timeline of what is exactly going to be considered attendance.
So the guidance is that we have to create that definition. So within the context of our attendance policies and the remote learning model or the hybrid learning model that we create, we have to define what attendance and participation is for those settings. So we have thankfully existing structures within our district that are very well versed in attendance. We have an attendance task force that involves community members. So that, along with our administrative team and instructional team and student support team, will craft that definition. And then that has to be very clearly communicated to families. What I can say right now is that attendance will be recorded daily. So the expectation is that we will be taking attendance in our school tool system each day. And the definition of what attendance is for the remote learning purpose will be evolving as we develop further guidance documents within our plan.
That's perfect. I just wanted to make sure that I was clear with that. Thank you for clarifying that.
May I ask one question? My question is, with how we're going with the kids will be in school some days, online some days, what does the movement look like in the building? So for instance, on our online days, would per se maybe our music, arts, phys eds, how does that work if they're physically in the building? Will they be able to move to those spots, or is that something that might be taught on the online days? Because that's something that's been asked to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're working out those pieces. It's very clear, though, that if the guidance would like you to stay in what they call cohorts. I know and what that means is trying to keep kids together as much as possible throughout the course of the day. So, in other words, you're not mixing and matching a lot of different kids. Obviously, at the elementary and the junior high level, I think that's a bit easier to manage. But I believe at the high school level, we're going to have to process through that and design that. Ms. Parkhurst and her team have been hard at work, really trying to hammer through that and trying to figure out what that may look like. And then there's also some very specific parameters around, for example, 6 foot physical distancing is something that, you look for in the classrooms. In fact, in a choral situation, if you're singing or you're playing an instrument, it's 12 feet. So you start to add some significant factors there. You also want to minimize the movement around the building as much as possible. So I think you're trying, there's a lot of different factors, Ms. Abelgore. I think you're onto something. It's something that we have to consider, and it's a pre-K all the way through 12th grade, that same type of thing. Anytime the goal is you have to minimize movement, you try to maintain physical distancing as much as possible, as well as obviously the face masks and all those other pieces or face coverings that go along with this. So it's a great question. We're going to be dealing with more of the details. I think, again, and we're going to be watching and learning from a lot of different districts. I'm sure we're going to see some innovative, creative ways to deliver all aspects and all curriculums that we have that we're responsible for and that we offer in our district.
Brian, if we do at the secondary level have situations where students do have to, because you're right, the secondary level is very different than the elementary, where you can keep kids more easily in a cohort, whereas the secondary level with electives and varied schedule student to student, they do mix a bit more. Is our custodial staff looking at how they might prepare those settings between, classes, if they have to share, if they have shared space?
Yeah, we're looking at that. In fact, when you only bring in a quarter, for example, that's one of the things that I think that we received when we were looking at the high school model. We have, I believe, 76 classrooms in the building to accommodate. We may be using 44 on a given day. So in other words, not double using a day or double using a day. There's a double for you. Double using a classroom in a day. Those types of things. If you have the cohort together, obviously they can take courses in the same room. However, if you are doing some things differently, I know that Ms. Parkhurst and her team are obviously looking at those pieces. We have learned in summer school, it takes approximately 20 minutes to clean a classroom. Or at least do the disinfecting. There's a difference between disinfecting and cleaning. And also we're going to maximize our staff, Mr. Cordone, really looking at the range of staff that we have in a building. And we have aides, we have all sorts of types of positions that we're going to have to work with our bargaining units to maximize the human resources that we have to help us with some of those transitions and supervision and making sure things are kept safe for kids and staff.
Another question for the future, not for tonight. I don't know. Not expecting is the wrong word. I think you're probably going to be working on it, or somebody will, as we progress into the next school year. But I know the question of extracurriculars is going to come up. So if we can have a report out on that at a future meeting, that would be good. I also wonder if we could get some kind of report about what things will look like for students who attend City.
Actually, on City, that's a great question. Probably should put that in our grid a bit. City, we're exploring a couple different models. City has put forth, and what we're doing is, as a group of superintendents, we're locking in. I'm not sure, Ms. Parkhurst would have to let me know if they locked that in or not. They were going to inform the high school principals. So obviously, we've been working closely with City as well, and we will share the plan for them as well. Obviously, we have in our district about 115 students who participate in that program, and they need those experiences and built them in. So we're working very closely with City as well.
Brian?
Yes.
For, I guess, the benefit of our community, could you let them know that we have to also, the procedure to get this model for us to use it, how that's going to work? I think people are asking questions thinking the governor's going to come up with a plan and we have to follow that. Could you talk a little about that?
Sure. Take me to that last page. Look at that. So, yeah, so what happens is the governor, what we have to do is we're going to put this plan. So let's say tomorrow, if all things work out perfect, I have to go onto the SED monitoring site and I have to answer 11 pages of assurances, which match perfectly the 145 pages of musts in there. And then what we have to do is we have to post our written plan, which has a lot more details that we have at this point. It's an evolving plan. So some of those are a plan to plan, and there's more detail in there. For example, like checking a person in the morning, getting on the bus, those types of things. We've alluded to what we have to do, which is taking temperatures and all those, but really refining, we've learned a lot from our summer program. So that plan will be on there. We also have to link that plan to the Department of Health. So not only do I go to the SED, I also link this to the Department of Health. My understanding is that they will review, they will give us feedback on the plan if there are any issues with it. It's really a local decision. The Department of Health will look at it all. So both departments, NICED, which is the New York State Education Department, and the New York State Department of Health will look at that, but it's a living document. So in other words, if on Tuesday next week we're gonna and we will be, we'll adding the plans as addendums, like this is how we will do dismissal and arrival procedures for students who are being dropped off at school at Lanigan Elementary School. This is how it's going to be, and it would be on there, right? And we would be adding that. So it's a living document. So the idea is we have to keep our website up to date. And whenever we make adjustments, we add to our plan. So on a daily basis, we'll make those adjustments. So that's how that works. The governor has put out the purpose of what the governor is saying. He's indicating that he will make a determination as to whether or not on August, let's say at the latest 7th, make a determination that we get a green light to go based on the data on August 7th, green lights to go with your plan as designed. Or he could say red light. I'm going to say, Labor Day happens to be just like Memorial Day and the 4th of July, where people get together. Do we need to maybe delay that? Up to the governor. Don't know. Or he could say, I want you to go completely into a remote mode. That's the guidance I believe that we're looking at for the governors. The idea is to have our plan ready to roll. And then what we're going to do is, regardless of what comes out, we're going to be working on this well before the 7th, continuing working on all aspects of our plan. And then once we get a green light, then we'll go into the mode of gearing up for whatever type of implementation that we need to do, whether it's full remote or as our plan is designed, we're ready to roll with the information from our parents and our staff about what we have. Obviously, you need everything working in concert together. So you have to have enough teachers, on site, enough staff, all those kinds of things coupled with the students. There's a lot of moving parts. I hope that answered it in a very long way.
It did. And many people approached me thinking that the governor was going to tell how you were going to go back to school. And I needed to explain the procedure. So
yeah, no, it was a great question, Lynn. A great question. Thank you.
Brian, how are we going to handle the food distribution? Is it going to be for the the day that kids are not in session, the Monday, it seems like it's doable. Perhaps, what's the plan for for food, the lunch and breakfast?
Yep, I don't have it memorized, but this morning, Miss Warwick, the director of our food services, turned a plan into us. So we began embedding all of those different sections, those different teams that were working. So the food services is there. There's a plan for students who are in session, in person. There is a plan for remote learners. And obviously the online day is also, so probably something very similar to what we did before. So kids maybe on a Friday bring their Monday home, that type of thing. So yes, there's a plan that's completely written out that goes with that.
And will they be like bag breakfast, grab and go, and bag lunch with limited options or something along those lines?
Yeah, what you want to do is, and the other piece is, and in the guidance, it's very clear that large open spaces, as far as like cafeterias, where you have a high number of kids, they do not want us to do the group gathering. So I think what you're going to see is more eating in the classrooms, grab and go, those types of things, breakfast and lunches in the classrooms. You may have small groups of kids brought to the cafeteria, but it might be the same group of kids every day, the only 12 or 24. I mean, that type of thing, because obviously we're maximizing all the spaces during the course of a day. So that's the idea. So they will try to limit the movement as much as possible.
And I'm thinking specifically of the secondary level then, where, it's not like a class, an elementary classroom where they use one space. They could use one space most of the day. Is the plan not to use the cafeteria, at the junior high and at the high school then?
Yeah, I think as much as possible, it's clear in the guidance. They really, they don't want it. They give you guidance to, if you're going to use your cafeteria, as very specific guidance on how to do that. But once again, you end up with a lot of individuals in the same space. You end up having issues around physical spacing and being able to maintain all those physical distances. Remember, when you're eating, you take your mask off to eat as well. So obviously in those times when we utilize those spaces, and I'd work very closely with my principals, if we needed to use those spaces, I would look for a very comprehensive plan about how we would do that safely and make sure that those areas are kept safe.
So my reason for asking that is, the staff needs a lunch period and the students need a lunch period. So how are kids going to be supervised then in classrooms if the teachers that would normally be in them are going to be having lunch? Have we been able to work through that yet, or that's still kind of in the process?
That's still in process. Obviously, one of the things we have to look at is we're blessed. We have an outstanding work group with us. We have a lot of employees in our district, and we'll look at all the roles and responsibilities and all the human resources that we have available as existing in every school to see how we could lay that out. But yes, everybody would get their contractual lunches and things like that, obviously.
Thanks.
Good question.
Brian, going back to Lynn's question about the governor's office, are we expected to hear back from him? I asked because I heard a report this morning on the news that no news is good news from the governor's office. So if we don't hear back from him, we're good to go.
That is correct.
Yeah, obviously one of the things that they're really not clear. Actually, the state ed, I'm not sure. Our plans will all be up and we'll get feedback. I don't think it's an approval. It's really checking our plans to make sure that we're meeting all the assurances. It's really district level decisions. The big decision for the governor really needs to be, are you going to allow us to implement the plans as designed, or are you going to make the decision as a state that we're just not ready to roll in September because of the COVID type of thing? It won't be because schools aren't ready to roll. It'll be because the pandemic has given us data that indicates that maybe right now is not the best time to move forward. So I think he wanted us prepared anyway that we move to be able to do that. And he also, I think the other piece is, I alluded to it, obviously, August 7th is a whole lot before September 7th, so there's a lot that could happen between those dates.
And Brian, the other thing would be are we able to get enough, stockpile enough PPE, the mask, the hand sanitizer, and are we clear that we have quality hand sanitizer and sanitizer that is not healthy? Someone informed me that Mr. DeJalorme, could you help me with that with the sanitizer issue? There's some bad sanitizer on the market.
Nick, we can't hear you, sir.
Yes, my son notified me today that there's some bad hand sanitizer coming up from Mexico, and that we should look on the label, not for the ingredients, not what's in it, but where it was made.
Interesting.
Okay. Well, and that's, Dick, you bring up a great point. Obviously, one of the things we're trying to do, and we have identified a COVID coordinator, Mr. Els, is working as the COVID. That's one of the roles and responsibilities. It's one of the things they recommend in the plan, so we've done that as well, and he's going to be helping us with our monitoring. But he's also he's the one that is leading our nurses in that realm, as well as obviously athletics and health and all those other pieces. And we've been working very closely along with Mr. Crump and his team around getting stockpiles of hand sanitizer. And we're very careful. We're trying to go with the vendors that we've gone with in the past, that they're known vendors to us. With PPE, we're trying to go with known vendors, people that we trust and we've worked with in the past, and building on those relationships. So I think we're very cognizant of it. And sadly, in a world where we all need to be coming together, there are individuals out there that not necessarily may not be providing the product that we're looking for or need for our staff and kids.
And lastly, are we disconnecting our hand dryers and going strictly to paper towels in all of our hand washing areas?
There's actually, and Robin, I can get back to you on that, but there is some information on there about using the blowers, which is actually not good either, because you actually have to hit the blower to actually dry your hands. So now you've actually cross-contaminated possibly.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Are they disconnected so we're not using them? I think that should be done.
Yes, yeah, we're looking at them, and we have, yes, we'll. Okay. Yes.
Yes, I'm just trying
the subject. I have a question.
Yep.
How are they going to social distance the elementary kids when they're all in the school?
So one of the things that we had to do as far as, and you'll see it in the plan, is you have to look at the capacity of all your schools. So we actually have maps of all the schools and the square footage per room, but then we actually, our principals, as part of the retreat, worked on and actually established the number of students in the classroom. And then we also had the advantage of extended school year. So we actually have classrooms set up and what they look like. And I know that, excuse me, that a couple, there are some classrooms in the district where principals have gone in and taped floors and get an idea. Till you physically see it, you don't really get an idea of what that looks like and what needs to be in a classroom and what doesn't, and how many things that we have in our classrooms. So that's been an eye-opener that we really first learned with our extended school year, but now we're starting to explore, what does that actually look like? So if you walked into a building and you saw 25 class desks, just 12 of them, that's not an issue. Here's the problem. I've got 25 surfaces of desks and chairs that can be touched as they go through. And then you need to do that. You have to look at those kinds of things as well. So every one of those desks would have to be cleaned and surfaced. So there's a lot of things that we're looking at as part of the plan. So the idea is that we know the maximum numbers that we predict for classrooms. And then what we do is we create those spaces within the classroom. So in other words, for example, in our extended school year, you'll see that we have ordered thousands of rolls of tape, by the way. So that will give you an idea of what we're doing. And also we're thinking about color coding, red, green, and yellow, and all sorts of kind of things standardized across the district. So things like that, marking where desks should be seated, all that kind of thing. So there's a lot of layers to that question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Brian, I'll send you that link about the hand sanitizer. Anyone else interested in that interview, let me know via Messenger, and I'll forward that to you. That was on the news down in Jacksonville, Florida.
Yeah, I believe there was 70 different companies that were recalled.
Yeah. Please send it, Nick.
Okay.
Thank you.
Brian, with reference to the need to kind of maintain the sanitization and the learning and work environment for staff and for students, do we anticipate at this point that we might have to add any custodial staff?
So interesting you asked. Yesterday, and Mr. Lisi might be one if you want to chime in at all, since that's in your domain along with Mr. Crump now, is that we did meet with the head custodian, and I asked that very question, given the staff, and the question they brought, and it was perfect because I already knew the answer, was yes, if we're fully staffed. So one of the things that we're going to focus on, and we've been looking at this before, was that building on and looking at our sub costs and things like that. The goal is the teams seem to think if I can keep them fully staffed 100% in, so if I got 3 absences, being able to fill those immediately. And we have an idea on how to do that. So that's the idea. And then they said we could do that, but we have to look at shift work to it, just making sure that we have the right number on. So right now the answer is we need to make some adjustments, Dave. And then if we need to add, I think we're going to learn a lot, over the next few weeks about that. But the custodians, it was a good meeting with the head custodians. Dom, would you add anything to that?
My question for the team at that point was, what does fully staffed actually mean in this environment? And I think that's something we're going to learn as we move forward, because we have to look at metrics and what others are doing in this situation. I think that the dynamic has changed quite a bit. And so we're going to have to evaluate that.
And the other question I had was related to staffing in general. So going back to the survey information that Dan presented to us regarding at least the component of staff members who have underlying conditions, or perhaps, they're cancer survivors and they're currently in treatment or whatever their situation might be. Do we have a handle on the process for those folks not having to be perhaps in the learning environment with students, and then how does instruction look for kids who might be assigned to them? What does that look like? Do we know yet?
Ms. Geithner, do you want to comment? I'd say that's a work in progress with Ms. Geithner.
That's correct. We are receiving all kinds of guidance on how to construct those processes. And certainly that will be a collaborative conversation with our staff and the bargaining units.
Okay. So it's kind of really not at a place yet where you can offer any detail.
Right. We're just looking for all of the guidance within the regulations right now, as well as all of the labor laws, family leave laws, and et cetera. We're digesting how they all overlap and how we apply them appropriately in this uncharted territory.
Thanks.
Lynn, I thought I saw a while ago you wanted the mic. Do you still want to talk? Lynn?
Oh, me?
No, I thought Lynn wanted, I thought I saw you trying
No,
to.
I asked my question. No,
Okay.
I was telling Nick I wanted him to send me the thing.
Oh, okay. All right.
I do have a question though.
Okay.
From a teacher. What
Yes.
about RTI interventions?
It's a good question.
Yeah, Ms. Connors, please.
There is a piece for RTI. At this time, it's one of the areas that we're still looking at, and we will be getting back. I wonder who that RTI teacher might be. So we will be forthcoming with additional information.
Okay, thank you.
Robin, I have a question.
Yeah. Go ahead, Fallon.
So I know this is going to be a very difficult question to ask because everything is so fluid and nobody has a crystal ball. But going back to the custodial staff and additional staffing needed for our plan for the school year, do we foresee transitioning back to a normal school year, bringing the high school kids back if levels low, if vaccines come out, if winter goes by and we're bringing those students back? Is that something we're considering? Because if we are, what does custodial staffing look at that point to keeping those rooms clean? Do we need additional staff for that then?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think like everything else, we'll monitor closely and we'll gear up. I think one of the plans that we're looking at is, maybe having to increase our staffing a little bit to make sure we always are fully staffed all the time. But that's a great question. I think we monitor closely. I mean, one of the things we see is seems like there's always about a 14-day lag with decisions and things like that. So that would be nice if they at least maintain that. Would give us a little bit of reaction time. I would hope that we wouldn't say, gee, it's Thursday and we're made a decision, everybody goes back to school on Monday. Obviously we'd have to gear up, but I think we would see that coming because the data would be looking awfully good across the country, would anticipate to get to that point. But that's a great example, Fallon, where we need to keep an eye on the data and what's going on all the time, every day around us, because the world is changing so quickly and we can learn a lot from other places. And so that's what we're going to be doing.
Yeah, I'm just worried about I think if we're fully staffed at what our current levels are, but aren't planning on having those students in, but we bring them back, filling those positions, getting the workforce, making sure we're keeping that option and that rotating and making sure that we're keeping an eye on that.
It's a great question, Fallon, because if we opened as fast as we closed, that would be an interesting predicament.
Brian, go ahead, Robin.
Thanks, David. I have a question from a parent. Believe it or not, reached out. They would like to know if online teaching for the high school students will include any live teaching or recorded lessons.
Ms. Connors?
Yes, the answer to that is yes. That's what we've written into our plan, and more details will be forthcoming. Again, I hate to keep saying that, but yes, there'll be additional information coming. But yes, it will be. It is not going to be what it was in the spring.
Thank you. Thank you.
My next question, I apologize. I'm going back to transportation. So I'm just wondering about Golden Sun's ability with this plan to, and their capacity to transport students with the social distancing requirement. And what is the number of students that we've determined can be on a bus run at a time? And how will that be accommodated at each level? Are we concerned at all with that?
It's a good question. We're working very closely with Golden Sun. They're truly an amazing partner for our district. We've looked at that. Actually, we have a cleaning protocol that we developed as part of the extended school year, which is going to be used right into the school year. We know, and there's very clear guidance about high touch surfaces have to be clean or disinfected between runs, that type of thing. We also know what it takes at the end of the day to clean the bus and how many minutes it takes to clean the bus. We have a video for that.
But even runs and
that's correct. We will spend. Yeah,
I'm thinking even of I know there's some buffer if my understanding is that members of the same family can be seated together, so you don't have to spread them out. But I'm just wondering, have we delved into that level of detail to make sure that we can to support this model, transport all the kids in when we've scheduled them?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we have to take into consideration so far that's why it's going to be important when we reach out to every family to find out exactly if they're going to use the service. But we know that we can have 22 kids on a bus. It's masks and should socially distance on the bus, by the way, but we focus on 22. That was clearer guidance that we got. There was a lot of questions about that because originally we were getting 11 because we actually got on a bus, believe it or not, Mr. Kinane got on the bus from Golden Sun and measured it out, and he figured we could get 11. But then when the guidance came out from the state and we got further clarification, it looks like 22 on a bus. That's essentially one per seat with their mask on, and it should socially distance. The other piece we've got is a plan for disinfecting all those high-touch surfaces between the runs, the elementary run and the secondary run, or the secondary run and the elementary run in the morning, as well as in the afternoon, that there's time built into those pieces to do that. I think you're going to see a decrease. We have buses that some carry. My bigger challenge, I believe, is going to be the vans. The vans, actually, you can have one student socially distance on a van. And so we have a number of vans that we use in the fleet to do things. So that's a piece. But I think you're going to see, based on the preliminary survey that we had from our families, that you're going to see an increase in the number of families that are dropping their kids off and maybe parents aren't using the surface. So we'll have better information, Dave, once we have that, and that'll help us further define and refine the plan as it is designed as now.
And do we know the impact on the McKinney-Vento students? I mean, because those are kids obviously that are not going to be transported by parents, I'm assuming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have 20, I believe we're at, and Jerry, tell me if I'm wrong, 29 or 28 at the end of last year, but I believe, go ahead.
We did have approximately that many who are out of district who required individualized or special transportation. So currently, Liz Tiffany, who is our new McKinney-Vento liaison, is working with our community partners to figure out what those needs are and how we can meet those needs for transportation.
And just one more question that popped into my head. Back a few slides, Dan showed us that the option for parents not to send their students in the hybrid, that really isn't an option. Can you go back to that slide, Dan? And I'm just wondering, when will we get clarity on that? Yeah, the last bullet, I think on that slide there.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So I know when we talked to the commissioner yesterday, and last week, but also yesterday, they are still seeking this information. And as I said, and again, I take what I read in the news with a grain of salt, but you're seeing more and more districts that are actually offering that opportunity. I have a feeling it's going to be a choice, but again, I'm not, until we receive clarity. And yesterday, the commissioner wasn't able to provide that clarity, indicating that we're still waiting for guidance from the governor's office with respect to that guidance.
My concern with that is that we're putting it on teachers, then our staff, to do one more thing. And you know what I mean? They're already going to be, teaching to students in the hybrid model, but then we're going to ask them to do distance learning with others who are choosing something else. And I'm just wondering, will that impact them? Will that be a grievance issue for staff if they, it's extending their work time, their work day. You know what I mean? I expect that families might want that, prefer that, but I also see why it's really not an option that, is being offered or suggested perhaps by SED. And I'm wondering about that guidance.
Mm-hmm. Right. And again, I think we will work very closely with our bargaining units. I think we also really need to dig into more about what this model would look like. I don't know, Betsy, if you'd add anything to that or not.
What I would add is we do have some ideas, Dave, but again, I hate to put ideas out there without the guidance, but I think the team we have addressed it and we've talked about it. But again, we would like to wait till we get clarification.
And I get that. I'm just glad that you're paying attention to it because like I said, I think our teachers, even through the closure, they worked probably as hard or harder than when we were in session from what I know as an educator. And I'm just concerned about that element because on top of what we're asking them to do now that we've planned, a hybrid model and, they're going to, have the option to connect with all kids, then they've got to do one more thing on top of that for people who want a different option. And I just wonder if there will be an issue there.
We're not seeing it as a one on top of, we're seeing it as some different alternatives that we've come up with
So you think within the teacher workday, they can do the hybrid model and potentially support a group of students whose family might be choosing this option?
What I would like to say is that we are looking at options that are outside of the box that would not stretch a teacher too thin because we understand that they went above and beyond during this closure. And we respect the amount of work and that they put into our kids. And so we've talked about some other models that aren't that black and white.
And can you share, would that entail perhaps those students having a different teacher of record for the?
At this time, Dave, I really don't want to go much deeper until I have had some time to do some background work on this that still needs to occur. Again, we're still waiting to hear that guidance. We are working on it.
Will we get an update on that when you receive the guidance that you're seeking?
Sure.
I would anticipate that you will have an update at every board meeting from now right through, because as you know, the commissioner said to us when she was here, and I know Brian has said too, this is just such a fluid situation and a flexible situation. It's so hard to plan for. And I, you know, for all the educators, because I know we have a lot of them that are watching, I want to reassure them that we will continue to work to make sure that we meet the needs of our students in a way that is fair to all parties involved.
Thanks.
I have a question.
Yep, go ahead, Lynn.
Just a real quick one. Somebody asked me this. They wondered if elementary is going to look like 22 to 26 kids in a room, and how will you keep them apart?
Well, the answer to that is easy. No. It's going to be, you have to, when you think about a classroom, you'd see it probably no greater than half. If you think about the size of a classroom, it's about half the kids, about 12. Some rooms, maybe one more. But that's your average number right now in a classroom is what we're probably looking at somewhere. And our high school rooms are a little bit bigger than that. So,
Brian, I in talking to one of our administrators who taped off a room.
Yeah.
There are some rooms that can be like 14, 16. It depends on the room. That's right. It really is the room.
Yeah, it's really the room, literally the square footage. Yep.
I just had a parent text me, so I thought
the answer really is it depends on the room, because they are all measuring. I've run into a couple of administrators that have been actually doing the measuring and taping. And so they are being very careful and very thorough about the 6 feet. And you know, you've traveled around this district, you know, not all rooms are equal. So it really is going to depend on the room.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So we've asked a lot of questions. There's a lot yet to be done. There's a lot of work here. This looks like we meet the state requirement after you fill out your forms, Brian. I would just say that we've heard several times tonight, we will hear more detail as the detail is developed. And again, I ask for everyone's patience. Ask those questions. Don't forget, it is clerk@fulton.cnyric.org. Send those questions in. Call your favorite board member. We will do our best to get answers back to you. And everybody's trying very hard to help everybody meet as many needs as possible. But again, folks, it's not going to be perfect. We have far too many people to be able to have a perfect plan for everyone. It's just, I just don't believe that's humanly possible with the large numbers of people we're dealing with and with so many variables. So again, patience for all of us. We just need to take a breath and please, we need to support one another. So if I may borrow from my favorite clerk, Mrs. Perry, more to follow, unless you have more for us, Mr. Polvino. Okay.
Now it's not letting me in. So, we're done this evening. This is just the beginning. And one final thing would be, everyone's voice is essential in this whole process. Your voice is so essential, from the information that we've gleaned and collected so far to the information that we need from you over the coming weeks, and the information and the guidance and feedback we're going to need from you throughout the course of this process, well into the school year and probably into the next. Your voices are essential. So that's what keeps us on the ball and on point. Thank you.
And as I move to close, one other thing I'm going to borrow from Mrs. Cooper. We have a big audience. If you haven't completed your census, please do so. And anyone that you are in contact with, any family member, if you send out emails, please, this is the time to remind people, beg them, please fill out their census. This is so critical to our school district that we get as accurate of an counting of folks as possible. People are hurting, and we need to be have our numbers in there. So please do that. So without further ado, would someone move to adjourn the meeting?
Move it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? I'm a yes, Mrs. Perry.
Okay. Mrs. Alvagore,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
I'm a yes.
Mr. Cordone,
Yes.
Mr. DeJorn,
Yes.
and Mrs. Lyons.
Yes.
Thank you all. Thanks to those who took the time out to view this evening. We hope you had some questions answered. Please don't be frustrated by the answers you don't have. They will be coming. Have a great evening, folks, and enjoy the rest of your week. Stay well.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.